With She Is Active. So we have Megan here from She Is Active. That's a group here in Fredericton that works to ensure that there's lots of opportunities for women and girls in sport and profiling those. So we're very pleased to be able to help support that, collaborate and support that initiative. And then we're super stoked to have Dr. Paula Keating here tonight. Paula is a very dedicated board member as well as a Hall of Famer with New Brunswick Sports Hall of Fame and a very gifted runner. So I'm very pleased to have her here tonight to give a little presentation on a variety of things, but some of it's around the idea of running race preparation and such. So, yeah, so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Paula. So, welcome, Paula.
Everybody can hear me, hopefully. It's a small room. Yeah, so thank you all for coming this evening. And I thought I'd start by just sharing a little bit about my running journey and story and share some slides that I've thrown together from over the years. I realized today I've been racing for 20 years, which is a long time. Then I came to it sort of late in my life, or later in my life. And I was always active. I always participated in sports. I played high school sports, field hockey. I did attempt to do track and field when I was in high school, but when a coach at that time told me, "You'll never run fast, your legs are too short." So I proved him wrong. Anyway, I did that, and then I went on and I played varsity level field hockey at university at Mount A, and always ran to keep in shape, but just never competed. And finally, on my 39th birthday, the Rock and Run race was happening in membre, and I thought, you know what, that'd be a good thing to do before I turn 40. I'll do the half marathon. And I didn't really train. I just ran, and I ended up coming second in that race, and I picked off a few people as I ran around the river, and a couple of people that were involved in the Membre River Runners Running Club. It's like, you should come to some of our races. I think you have you might do okay at this. So that sort of sparked my interest, and I ran a couple of the 5Ks through the Membre River Runners that summer, and obviously learned as I went along, and this, my running second career skyrocketed, I guess, after that. And I was self-coached for most of the time I ran. I just read and read and read, and my husband used to growl at I had stacks and piles of books. He's like, "Get rid of some of those books. There are too many in the house." But that's how I learned. We all learn in different ways. Some people are tactile learners. Some people learn by listening. I learned by reading, and obviously learned lots and studied lots through medical school, and I think that helped me through my running journey as well. So that's how I started, and I'll go through some of these slides and share part of my journey with you, and then I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about running and life. So many of you will know Joan Benoit Samuelson, an icon in women's running, and she was the winner of the first women's Olympic marathon. Women were not allowed to run any distance greater than 800 meters in the Olympics up until 1984. Or they might have done the 1500 before, but it was just felt that it was too hard for women to do that. And she's an icon, and this is a quote from her: "Passion is the most important characteristic of a champion." And I think anything we're passionate about, we will put our heart and soul into, and try to do well at it. And I had the privilege of meeting her several times in Summit when I got invited to as an elite in Boston and New York, and just a really wonderful person. And one piece of advice that I took from her was in the Boston Marathon in 2015. We just talked about it was kind of cold and windy and a little rainy, and so the elites got to go with this little Korean church right at the start of the Boston Marathon. So she was in there running. She was running it. She wasn't competing as she once did at that time. But she gave me the advice that if it's cold and wet out, put Vaseline on any exposed body parts. And so I took her advice, and it really worked. So I'll share that with you. It helps. And then another funny story about her. So I did fairly well in Boston several times when I ran it. Won my age group there a couple of times. And but my father, who's a big he's a big sports guy, and always wanted his children to do very well. And I remember after this particular Boston Marathon, I think it was 2015, he calls me up, we're still in Boston, he's like, Joan's 9 years older than I am, so just in a slight, he said, you ran well, and I saw this, I think I must have been 45 maybe at the time, I won the 45 to 49 age group, and she was 54. He's like, this 54-year-old woman beat you. And I said, Dad, do you know who she is? Anyway, to put it all in context, so people who perhaps don't know running, just look at your age and like, how can someone that's 54 run that fast and beat a 45-year-old? But those of us who run know that that's possible. So, it just, there. And then, this is a quote that I always, and it's become more important to me, I think, as I age too, but it said, fearless running takes practice. You want to run hard, you want to run fearlessly, you have to practice it. And you have to practice both the mental and the physical skills to do that. But don't let it consume you. So start by reminding yourself that it's only a race, and running is simply a hobby for all of us. It's a hobby for others, it is a career, but what are you afraid of? Stopping? What's wrong with that? And I've had to learn that lesson over recently. I'll share that a little bit later. And it's like, you know what? Life goes on. So you fall, you stop, you walk a little, life goes on. We're all more than just runners. Running is a big part of who we are and what we are, but we're much more than just runners. And then another famous person who I've looked up to for many years, Sir Roger Bannister. He was also a physician, he was a neurologist, and he actually, when he was a medical student, broke the 4-minute mile, if I'm not mistaken. He said, the man who can drive himself further once the effort gets painful is the man who will win. And that's, have to sometimes put it all in there. And just as runners and as community members and people who do challenging things, that I think it's important that we demonstrate leadership, and we can be mentors to many other runners and community people around us. And so that there are 5, I try to follow these practices, and so it's modeled the way, show people what you can do and how it can be done, inspire, shared vision, so trying to inspire others to meet their goals and to do well, challenge the process, enable others to act, so help them, and encourage the heart. So I always tell people, always say, oh, well, I'm not a runner. Lots of my friends say, you don't have to be a runner, but find something that excites you and invigorates you and that you have a passion for, and you will do well in life. So I'll share some photos from over many years of running. So my trajectory, I ran my first marathon in 2009. I was supposed to run New York in 2008, but I tore my meniscus cross-country skiing that winter and had to have surgery, so I had to defer it. And at that time, you could actually defer an entry to the big marathons. So if you can't do that anymore, so you can't come, too bad. See it whenever you qualify again. But at that time you could, so I deferred to 2009. And my first marathon, I have some pictures of it later, was the New York City Marathon in 2009, and I'll share that in a minute. But this is the start of the Detroit Free Press Marathon, which was my first marathon victory in 2010, and that is probably part of the reason why I'm in the Sports Hall of Fame, because I won the Detroit Marathon in 2010, and that was quite an exciting moment for. And that was my 3rd marathon ever, so very exciting. So once I won in Detroit and I kept lowering my times in the marathon, I was invited to run in Boston, and we know you try to qualify for Boston, but I was actually invited as an elite runner. They had a master's category, and so I was over 40, and I was invited in 2010, 11, 12, it carry on, but we got to start ahead of everybody else, the elite women, started in just a small group, and these were a number of runners. I looked at this picture when I was going the other day, and I said there I was F114. So the lower your bib number, the faster you were. And this year I was 15,551. So things have changed with age. So, kind of funny, but we have to embrace change and do what we can when we can. And then this is just coming down into getting close to the finish line in Boston. And Boston, for many of you who have done it, is probably the most iconic race that you can ever run, and the fans and the city are just alive on race weekend. And I've actually had my personal best in Boston, so it's very special to me that way too. And then from Miramichi, it's nice to be from a small community. Sometimes when people know you and they want to celebrate the accomplishments of their community members. So this was the former mayor, and they presented a nice award for my win at the Detroit Marathon. And it's nice to have your community recognize you, and maybe it inspires others to say, wow, I'm from a small place too, and maybe I'm good at hockey, maybe I'm good at pickleball, maybe I'm good at whatever, but to challenge yourself. And you don't have to be from a big city or a big province to do well and have success in any endeavors. And then just a few races from over the years, and you'll probably recognize some of the people. There's Dean Strobridge, who most of us know, and Dean was a very accomplished runner back. He's still very accomplished in one of the Gotros. And then Sylvia O'Rourke. I always like to show this because most of us have been in the running community for a while know Sylvia. And Sylvia was actually going to be inducted this year in the ceremony into the New Brunswick Sports Hall of Fame as an arm wrestler. He was also a great builder and a great motivator, but he was a world champion arm wrestler, and you will see his picture in these hallways after June of this year. So nice to have known him and shared. And there, Todd. These are pictures from back many years ago. You'll probably, Alex Goff, you'll recognize many of these people from it's just over time, and the people you meet through running and engaging in sport. It's just, people ask me what I love most about running, and I love the actual act of running, but the most valuable thing I've gained from running is friendships. And it's been amazing. So we all recognize, I think that's Matt McNeil, actually a young Matt McNeil over in the blue, who's quite an accomplished runner himself, and lots of great New Brunswick runners and events. This is my second Boston Marathon, and of course you need the support of your family and friends to succeed at anything in life, and certainly my son and husband were very supportive throughout my running career, and like to come on the trips with us, and we made some nice family vacations through running. And so you can still do family things and run. So it is possible. And then this is in Miramichi, and that was probably, and I remember when I was just to have that community around you. And you have a lovely community now in Fredericton for running, with the Stride running. It's a nice group of people that meets weekly. In Miramichi, we had the Miramichi River Runners, who has monthly races, and many, like hundreds and hundreds of races over the years. But that's how you can improve at running, is just enter a race. And so if you have to walk, just go be there, and by meeting people that are inspired to run and better themselves, you can better yourself. And then you get these friends, this is Paul Como with me, and Paul and I used to run. He beat me, I beat him, in every race we try back and forth we challenged one another, and that helped us both grow and develop as runners. And so it's nice to have that community and camaraderie. So this is I've had lots of great international experiences, and this is a picture my husband took on 7th Avenue in New York of the New York Half Marathon, and this is Haile Gebrselassie, who was the world record holder in many events for many years. And I remember I was not in the elite group when I first went there, and I remember being in one of these corrals, and they're walking in all the elites by, and I had followed him for years, and he's walking by, and wow, this is just amazing. And there was the people, and then a couple of years later, I was on the bus with them, so it was fun to do that. And just another couple of pictures. Just you can travel and see so many sights in the world and meet so many amazing people through running has enriched my life. This is the New York Marathon, just coming up on 59th Ave, just as you almost turn back into Central Park, and the fans are amazing. Like I would highly recommend the New York Marathon just for the experience. If it's not that easy to get into anymore. I think I read a statistic. I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of people applied this year, but I think they said it is harder now to get into the New York Marathon or some of these other ones than to get into medical school, and it's pretty hard to get into medical school. So this shows you how running has boomed and the popularity of it. And this is this is Fred Lebow. He was the founder of the New York City Marathon back in the early 1970s, and I just loved this quote: "Few things in life match the thrill of a marathon." And it may not feel thrilling when you're out there in the thick of it, but to have done it and accomplished it, and it's so satisfying and amazing to know you have put the work in and succeeded. That's just Ryan Hall, who's the American record holder in the marathon with a time of 2:04, just over 2:04. So I got to run in a few races with him and meet him a couple of times. This is in Miramichi. Some of you may know Brian O'Shea from, I was like, if we only hadn't shown up, I might have won the race. He beat me by a few seconds. He was also about 20 years younger than me. So if I age graded my time, as we talked about, as we get older, there's a thing called age grading your time. So it compares to, when you're 58, like I am now, what you might run when you're 30. And it's like, I beat all those 30-year-olds by age grading. They beat me in, but it's a nice way as you age to compare your times and see what makes you feel better. And then just a couple, this is I think Marathon by the Sea at many years ago, and had lots of great experiences there running the half marathon and some faster days. And then this is near the finish of the New York Marathon, 100 yards to go. My husband, when we were in the elites, he gets to sit in, like your family members get to sit in the VIP special viewing areas. So he nabbed a few photos, and then these are obviously the race winners coming in. And I think I remember in New York so I ran in 2009, and Meb Keflezighi won that year. And as you know, and then Meb went on to win in Boston in 2014. But I remember, so I was in that race. I was back a bit further. And 2011, I was invited back to run in New York in the elites. And I remember I didn't really know anybody. And I remember I was in a breakfast room. So they had this beautiful breakfast and these lovely buses that take you to the start. And I remember sitting there, and I could see Meb Keflezighi walking towards me. And he said, "Do you mind if I sit here for at breakfast?" And I'm thinking, "Do I mind if you sit here?" He sat, and he was up, and he said, "Oh, I was here in 2009 when you won." He said, "Well, maybe you'll bring me luck this year." But he didn't win in 2011. But I actually did win the Masters in New York that year, so he brought me luck maybe. But it was interesting too, because when you see what these elite runners eat and what they do before races, and I remember him eating a great big plate of eggs. And I'm thinking, eggs? Before a marathon? Like this, I can't eat eggs before I run anything. But everybody's different and our bodies respond differently. And at that time, he said, "Well, they feed you breakfast at 6 a.m. And I think the men didn't start till, he said, "I can stay full for a few hours before, I don't start till for 4 more hours." And obviously they had carbohydrates and did that too. But that's always stuck with me. And I I never tried eggs before because I didn't think they would work for me. So, but we all figure out what works for us and helps us accomplish our goals. And then I love this picture because this, I don't know if you can see, these are, you can see me behind these canyon runners, just tucked in behind. And so years ago, the women in the elite, in New York and Boston, the elite women would start ahead of the men because they wanted to give the women their special moment to win and to be showcased, like the women's winner of these races. So you would start, I think it was 28 minutes ahead or 32 minutes. And then some of us that were not like the elite career marathoners, but we would start, but they would always tell us before, like they'd say, okay, the men will pass you at some point. You're going to hear the motorcycles coming in the cars, pick a side of the road, they will run by you. And that's fine. So a couple of times it happened, so it was just this time. So I'm running, and I was going at a pretty good pace. Like I was like thinking, I'm going, yeah, all right. And then you can hear the motorcycles coming and the cars come. They're like, pick a side. So you move over, and then all of a sudden, and I was always amazed at how, like, you could not hear these men coming by. Like they're just so light on their feet, hardly breathing. And this is, I forget which year, that's 2012, the really hot year. So, but there was another year that Ryan Hall was in the pack and they blew by me, and there were like about 10 runners going. You could barely hear them. That's what always struck me, is just how beautiful and graceful they were as runners. That it was, yeah, anyway, I had some amazing experiences to actually watch them, and you think you're moving at a, not a bad pace, and they're just gone. Because they're running, what, 4-minute miles in the marathon, or 4:30, 4:20? Yeah, crazy fast. And this was all, and that's just a couple more pictures at the start of Boston before the big crowds and when we were in the elite. And actually the girl that's me on the far right, and the girl beside me is Jen Nicholson from PEI. She was a really good runner from PEI, and she and I ran a number of races together and worked together. And I've actually seen her a couple times since at the Cabot Trail Relay. You were mentioning the Cabot Trail Relay, but she, we kind of lost touch over a while. But you meet some amazing people, like I said. And there you are, Alex Coffin. Yeah. And Chris, I remember this. So this was here in Fredericton in 2012. And I always used to have, I don't know if any of you as runners before races, you get nervous, you get, anxious, you start thinking about things. I always used to have these crazy dreams that my shoelace was undone, my shoe fell off, I got tripped. I was like, that'll never happen. So, this is probably when I was in the best shape of my life, and I was like, I knew I could run under, I had just run on 119 half marathon in New York, like 2 months before this. I was like, okay, I'm in the shape of my life, I'm gonna run the fastest half marathon I can, and Fredericton is known to be flat, it's a great race course, there's lots of fan support. At the beginning of the race, we all start out, and this is when everybody's crowded in, and the next thing I knew, I'm on the ground at the start of the race. And Rob Jackson, who many of you might know, Rob's an icon of running and has lots of age group records in New Brunswick. Rob was on top of me. Like somebody tripped us, cut in front, the two of us, and we kind of look at each other thinking like, oh gosh, how did this happen? But then, as you do with running, something doesn't quite go according to plan. You got to pick yourself back up and get back out there and run. And I remember we just kind of in disbelief, really. But we picked ourselves up and we ran, and I think Rob ran just under 119 that day, and I ran just over 119. So
maybe it was Jeff Queen. He looks guilty.
Yeah.
He was the guy with the hat.
Yeah.
His legs up to the side. He looks guilty.
It is Jeff Queen.
Yeah.
No, it was him.
It was
I didn't
him.
know him at that time. I don't know if I've ever
Story's
told
out.
I didn't know him.
I didn't tell him.
I didn't know him at the time. I do know him now better. And I was like, who's that guy?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it was him. Anyway, it all worked out in the end. But I always share this slide and this story to think, oh my gosh, like you can get thrown off, but just regroup, rethink.
I don't even care. Look at me, I'm just.
You were raised,
Yeah.
you used to race a lot, you could race break, and, yeah, and but anyway, you were upright, Alex, but yeah, so it is a good lesson, it's like, you know what, you have a plan, things might not go according to plan B, pick up.
Well, the Boston Marathon this year, John Career, he fell like
Yeah, I know.
within the
I
first
saw
100
that,
meters.
yeah. His time was a little faster than mine after a fall. Anyway, and this is probably one of my favorite running pictures ever. And somebody took this as I was running the Boston Marathon, and it was a fabulous race. That was the hot year that some of us may recall. I was like 85 or 88 degrees Fahrenheit, and it was hot. A lot of people, it was probably my best finish ever in Boston, but someone sent me this picture after, and I thought, wow, this is like near the end on Boylston Street, and I just loved that Canadian flag in the background. That was so meaningful to see that as a proud Canadian and placing well for Canada in the marathon. And it's always, just anywhere I go around the world running, I'm just so proud to be Canadian. And it's a wonderful thing to share with people. That's just, I was at the Miramichi Sports Wall of Fame with some other lovely Miramichiers. And that's just, I tried to inspire others. I coached some youth. That's my son. He would be so embarrassed to see that picture now. But and just some of his. And so we used to. He's now a weightlifter, not a runner. So I guess I didn't inspire him quite as much as I had hoped to. But we all have our things. And then just some photos. This was 2014 in Fredericton. I won the marathon here, and I've always loved running in Fredericton. Like, I always felt like the fan support was amazing, and just it's a great city to run in. So I wanted to share that. That's in London, 2022. So I've continued. I took a break from marathon running because I had a lot of injuries, and I just was like, am I really liking this anymore? Sometimes you have to reassess and reevaluate in your life and what's going on. And so I took a break, and then several of us went and got into the London Marathon 2022. Steve, you were part of that group, and we had a fabulous, it was a wonderful experience. And as I said, there are so many great places to visit in the world, and you meet so many interesting people from all over the world on these journeys. And then here's one of another, I've had several icons that I've really looked up to throughout my running career, and I don't know, many of you will know Patty Blanchard. Patty's also a member of the Sports Hall of Fame here, and Patty's run all over the world, and just world cross-country championships. She's won all kinds of masters awards in track, and she's someone that I looked up to and tried to emulate, and I chased some of her records over the years. So it's nice to just have this. And Patty is ill right now with but she came out. This was the Moncton Elite 5K a couple of years ago, and Patty came out. She was finished some of her treatments for her illness, and she ran, and she said, I don't care how fast I run, I'm just glad I could be here and run. And so that's what we have to rethink and change our goals sometimes, and just be happy that we can. And I think running gives us that ability to push hard through things, to set goals, to achieve goals, and to be healthy. And when we do come down with serious illnesses, people that are active and involved in sports and some type of activity do better than people who don't. That's a known fact. And this is another one of my running icons over the years who I've looked up to, and many of you will know Kara Goucher, won some very accomplished runner. I think she came third in New York and third in Boston. In her career, she won a bronze medal in the Olympics in the 10,000 meter a number of years ago, which was later upgraded to silver because of people were caught later for doping, and she's from that. But I met her and was in the elite area within Boston Marathon a few times with her, and New York, and so I had a little interesting conversation with her one day, because you think, oh, these, you know, these are our idols, these are our running people, and so we were in line about when you're in these elite areas, there's not lineups 10 miles long before your race, so you're in a little line. It was a cold day, and she was in the porta potty ahead of me and came out, and she said, "Be careful in there." She said, "I just dropped my glove down the porta potty." I'm going to, but she was sponsored by Nike, and I'm sure they had an extra pair for her there. If I dropped my glove, I'd be out of luck. So that's the difference between those of us that are not running is probably not our career. And then many of you will know Ben Flanagan, an amazing Canadian runner. He was actually not just the age group champion, he actually won the whole 5K that year, but got to meet him and chat with him a bit, and I'm sure he's inspired all kinds of younger runners now. He's the new generation of Canadian runners. And then just this past year, so I took a break. I thought, I still love running. I've had to reset my goals as I age and have some injuries and like it, but I thought, yeah, I'm gonna run, continue to run and travel, and have had to reset goals and look at age group. I used to win lots of races, and I was like, I can't do that anymore, but I can compete in my age group. So you reset, re-challenge, so I thought I really want to go on a nice trip somewhere. So this past fall, I found the Brussels Half Marathon. It was a fabulous race. In November, and I ended up. That's right in front of the Royal Palace in Brussels. That's where the race finished. It was a beautiful way to see the city. You run through it in the half marathon and finish there. And I had a wonderful experience and a great trip. And then this was that was just for something else. And then I've given lots of talks on running and being healthy and how to challenge yourself, and I just always, as a physician, I try to promote wellness and activity and healthy living, and these are the 4 principles of healthy living. So 1, not smoking, and I'll tell you a funny story about not smoking. I remember traveling around the world and running. I ran the Berlin Marathon in 2016, and so and some of you have run it, and I remember it was the first time I had run, I think, in Europe when I ran in Berlin. I've run several races since, and I remember you start on the lawn of the Reichstag, and I just look at it, and I remember walking to go over, and I could see these people smoking with race bibs on for the marathon, and I'm like, smoking? Do you think you're going to run a marathon? And anyway, apparently that's what they do in Europe. Anyway, Nikolai, you might know.
I think this year in Boston I see some people smoke.
In Boston, yes,
Yeah,
I think you told me that, but I just,
That's
anyway,
okay.
it's not one of the principles of healthy living. I'll just say that. And then, obviously, physical activity in whatever way, shape, or form. Eating healthy and appropriate nutrition means fueling ourselves for the challenges that we face, and we often see people under-fueling for, in certain weight class sports, like wrestling, for example, or gymnastic running. There's lots, and I always talk, and I see this in some of my patients too in my office, just like, well, I lose weight, and I'm not going to eat. And I said, food is fuel, like for whatever you want to do in life. It's for your brain. Your brain needs fuel to work. Your body needs fuel. Think of it as fuel. And I always give the analogy of, would you take your car out to drive if the gas tank was on empty? No. It won't move. Your body, and your body's the same. It needs that fuel. It needs the gas to get it going and keep it going. And then resiliency. And so resilience, I think, is a really important skill that we need as a runner and in life. And the courage to come back from mishaps, from negative events, whatever and that will carry us far in life. And I've had to channel into that this year in Boston a few weeks ago when I was running along and fell flat on my face, and not quite sure what happened, but I thought, wonderful people helped me all along the way, and I thought, as I was sitting in the medical tent, I said, I could call, you know, I could hop on the bus back to Boston. There were about 7 or 8K to go. And I thought, but I don't have any broken bones, and I just thought, I'm not sure that if I think I can make it to the finish line. And I had a wonderful lady that helped me from Boston that came over. She's like, I think you can do this. She said, I'm gonna walk and run with you to the next medical tent. And if you're not feeling good, we'll go in. But if you are, you're gonna finish. And so, yeah, I think part of it was this myself, but part of it was that someone else believed in me, so that gave me the courage and the power to come back and finish the Boston Marathon. And that goes for many things in life, not just running. So that's just a little bit of my story, and hopefully I've inspired and encouraged, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Yes.
What was your hardest race, notwithstanding maybe you already said, so pick the second hardest if it was one of those experiences that you mentioned. What was the hardest race, and what was your best race? And they may not necessarily be the slowest time, the fastest
No.
time. Expand upon those if you could.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, there were a lot of hard races. I remember, do you know what one was really hard that I found, and I'll go back to it, and it might have been one of those Hampton 5-milers, because I was, or maybe even there was a 10K here too, because I was running really well, and I just, there were a couple, I think there were probably 2 races, and one I remember was a Hampton 5-miler, and I had won it a couple of years, and then there was one year I was there, and there was a little Swedish girl, Frida. I don't know if you remember John Cleghorn's girlfriend.
Yeah.
And she was young and she was fast. And she and I ran neck and neck. And she beat me by 1 second in the end. And I was just like, at the end I almost threw up. And I was just like, but it was really hard because I hadn't lost many races up to that point. Like just at that, you know, we all have a window of time where we're gonna do well or when we have our thing. And I was disappointed in myself after that because I said, could I not have? Did I actually give it everything to beat her? I don't know. That was one of my hardest races when I look back at that because I thought I gave it all, but then I doubted myself after. It's like, did I? And so you question sometimes those things, and then and probably my best race, and it was a hard race, was Boston 2012, which was the hot year. And I was at a medical conference. They used to have a sports medicine conference that I would go to in conjunction with the Boston Marathon. And there were like experts from all kinds of physiology, heart, blah, blah, blah. And they were talking about how dangerous this marathon was going to be on Monday. And I was thinking, should I run this thing? Like, I don't know if this is safe. And anyway, and I just talked to people. I said, you gain knowledge from people who have experience. And I had never run a marathon in those type of conditions before. And I talked to a few people who had run them before, got a little bit of advice. And there were times when out there that I thought, I don't know if, anyway, so I decided, okay, I'm gonna try it. I'll drop out if I don't feel good. And anyway, I stuck with it. Lots of people dropped out in the race throughout because of conditions, various factors, and I stuck with it, and I ended up placing 14th out of all the women in Boston. So that's probably one of my proudest races. There's a lot. I have lots that if I really reflect back that didn't go. Yeah. Those are probably,
When you're struggling in a race, what do you do to try to get through that hump so that you can keep the foot on the gas and not back off?
Yeah, you have to do a lot of self-talk, and that's where, running is a mental sport too, not just a physical one. And I've always, I think I've had a lot of adversity in my life that I've had to learned to get through. I won't get into all those deep, but just from when I was young and growing up and had some trauma and in my family and different things that I've learned, and I've learned those skills about how to regroup, rethink, pick it up, and you just have little mantras, and I think one of the things that I often say, you can do this, you're good enough, you can push through, you've pushed through this, X, whatever before, you can do this, and you just have to keep going, keep going. And that works for me. Everybody has their own little thing that might, and it's just, okay, through the next mile, or through the next, and I'll tell you in that 2012 race, too, like it was hard, and it was tough, but my mom had just died of cancer a couple of months before the race, and I think that she was in my mind that day too and helped push me through too. So sometimes you'll run for, yourself, but you'll also run for something else, and that sometimes will get you through too. Yeah, Katie.
What are your go-to race day shoes now?
What are my go-to well, I'm rethinking that after my fall in Boston, but I used to be a big Saucony person, and so I did, but my favorite ones now, and I've run most of the bigger races, are the Nike Vaporfly, not the Alpha Fly. I just can't wear those, but the Vaporfly, like I had the 1, 2, 3, and now the 4, and I like those, but so they work for me, and everybody is a little bit different. But then I had the whole thing too after, I don't know if you guys read Kara Goucher's book about, everything that happened at the Nike Oregon project, and how there was a lot of abuse and women weren't treated fair. So I was like, I'm not buying any other Nike products ever again. But then I'm like, it's just the shoes. So I bet it's just the shoes, and I've stuck to that, just the shoes. Because for me, those are my favorite shoes. Yeah, but I'll train like I do. I have New Balance Fuel Cell Rebel that I train, and I really like those too. Yeah.
Are they the V4s? The Rebel V4s?
Yes. Yes.
I gotta think that the new sneaker technology is, I find them, I don't have super elite ones, but anyways, I've ran with a few people that do, and I find them fairly noisy. And I gotta think that the elites now are gonna be nowhere near as quiet in their races.
No, they won't.
Getting 7 pairs of those.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Because years ago when we were running those races, the super shoes were not on the market.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That's neat.
Yeah, you're right.
What do you think, what's your opinion about having a coach for masters athletes? Do you think it's necessary, or you can?
Coach?
Yeah.
Well, so I started, like I said, I self-coached myself for years, read, and I had to, with my busy work schedule too, like I kind of had to go when I could and do my own thing, so I didn't want to commit to that. But then a few years ago, I thought, well, you know what, maybe coaching would help. And so I kind of affiliated myself with the Halifax Road Hammers and got a bit of coaching through there, and it certainly helped for a while. So, and I think it's sometimes too where like a coach, somebody can see when we're pushing ourselves too hard, when we're not resting, when we're not, and it's just someone to bounce ideas off of, and it's like, okay, maybe, because, hopefully it's a coach with some experience at different ages and different levels, and ideally, and they can see things that we can't ourselves. I was like, oh yeah, well I know what I'm doing, and I can read, and I can do this, but sometimes you need an outside pair of eyes to just come in, and particularly for resting, and for appropriate workouts, appropriate volume of training, and so I think a coach can be very valuable. Yeah. Eric, you had a question?
If you were to recommend one bucket list race to put everything into the piggy bank for, where would you go? Or where should a young runner go?
Where should a young runner go? Yeah. I really liked it. I think if the New York Marathon is, if you're speaking marathon,
Yeah.
like Boston is Boston. Like that's probably, I think everyone, if they have the opportunity, should do it once. But New York is iconic. It's unbelievable. Like it's the fans, the people, the race, the city, yeah. And it's, yeah, yeah.
Of all the events you participated in, did you race them all, or were there some that you just ran for the enjoyment or for between races, or were they all
if you-
100%?
If you knew me and my personality, I pretty much raced every one of them. Or even if I said, I shouldn't say that, there were a few members who were running races, I'm like, you know what, I'm tired, I'm just gonna go and, run with someone, but I don't know, it's just in my nature to be competitive. I've been that way all my life, I'm unlikely to change, but yeah. But I value that in lots of people, and sometimes I wish I could do that. Because one, you're still in the race environment, you're meeting all kinds of people, you may have your own personal goals that are, not to, just to be out there and do it, to finish, no, I haven't done that very often. But I'm starting to do that now as I age, because I just can't run like I used to, and I'm starting to accept that.
So can you expand on that? Like, you would have been winning races outright or winning women's races for a long time, and there's a period of time where you're no longer the winner, you're high ranking, and it continues to drop down. Can you reconcile, you made a comment about how you perhaps, you didn't use this comment I guess, but you got adrift of running. You sort of backed away from running, but then you found your way to it again and found your way to have enjoyment and excitement and pleasure in it. Can you walk through that darker period? What did you do? What did you grab a hold of? What was it that allowed you to re-embrace running at a high level in different ages, but just not the winner anymore?
Yeah, and I guess it's just, I guess I did some reading on it. Reading has always been my friend, and just read about other successful women who had to change how they thought about running, and had to change how they thought about racing, and as they aged and their bodies didn't work quite like they used to, and did that. And then I think just changing it up and getting involved with a coach was just a little different approach, so that may have kind of helped remotivate a little bit too, and then setting age group goals rather than outright goals. Because that's what I can't compete with 20-year-olds anymore. I could in my late 40s and early 50s, but I'm now in my late 50s, and I just can't. But it still gives you pleasure and goal to say, oh, okay, I can train for that, and I can compare to my age group. Like, it was funny because last year I ran Boston, and successfully without falling. And I ran 3:19. Let's say my son, who was used to be, sent a message. She's like, "Is Mom happy with her time?" Because he was used to me running, sub 3 hours, or I ran 3:05, quite a bit faster. I was thrilled with that 3:19 because I felt like I had a good race, and I placed 5th in my age group, and I was like more than halfway through that age group. So that is maybe what you reset and reframe, and it's like, wow, I'm really proud of that result. Not the number on the clock, but how you felt about how you ran, and where you placed in your age group, Yeah.
What was your best time in the marathon? What was the pace per kilometer?
Yeah, so my best time was in Boston, 2:47.26. Was my best time. And you know what, I started running a long time ago. Even though I didn't race, I always think in miles, minutes per mile. That's how I can't convert, like I can roughly, I know, like, for a 20-minute 5K is 4 per K. But that otherwise, so my pace was, if you think in miles, so it would be less than 4 per K. You know, that was 6:22 per mile for the marathon in that 2:47. So that was my best time. And I was in the Boston 2012 time, like I was in shape to run, I think, and I would, at that time, I knew, like if I knew what I could run, And I was in shape to run probably 2:43-ish, but it was so hot that you have to respect the conditions that you're running in, and so we had to slow our pace, or we would have been in the medical tent. So I ran 2:48 that year in the heat, and so, but that's why I say too, that was probably my best race, because I felt I managed the horrible, like the heat, and just managed everything well. So you have to reset your goals sometimes on the spot.
Which is very difficult to do if you just spent 16 weeks training at a particular pace and have this expectation in your mind.
Yeah.
So how do you go about doing that, or how have you done that, Paula? Or like I said, okay, the conditions change, and you have to say, okay, you know what, today's not going to be able to sustain that pace, or maybe conditions are more favorable and I can actually push harder. Is there any tricks you want to share with what you've done, sort of just in the 24 hours prior to a race to adapt?
Well, I'll tell you, in that hot year, I talked to some of the people at the medical conference, so that helped. And then I talked to the women in the tent before, or in the Korean church before, for that particular race. Like, I remember that, and I don't know if any of you know Sherry Pierce. Sherry was a really good runner from Maine, and she ran several times there. She used to have a couple of records at on the Cabot Trail Relay too, and she was there, and she was a nurse practitioner by trade. So she and I talked, and I think the two of us together, we talked. And kind of said, okay, how are we going to manage the, like, she was faster than me. She's a number of years younger than me, so talking to other people that have a bit of knowledge and supporting one another. And then that hot year I ran, Jen Nicholson and I ran the first half together at a certain or revised pace. And we said, we'll support one another. And then I remember at the half, she's like, you're feeling better than me, you go. And so I went, because I felt okay, and she placed just behind, I was fourth, I think, in the Masters, whatever, and she was just behind, and it's, so if you're running with people too, and I always tell that everybody has to run their own race, and you have to respect that other people might be having a better day or a worse day than you, and so never say, we're good, I shouldn't say never, because sometimes you run, and it's just like, if you're having a bad day, I will join you, but if you're going for a particular goal, then maybe say, okay, we'll run together for as long as we can, but if you're feeling poorly, I may go on, is that okay? You sort that all out before the race, because it might not work out so well after.
So for people that enjoy running, do you recommend they find a club and run with a club? There's value there?
I think there is. You hear so much about running community, and I really can speak to that. Like, I did a lot of training on my own, just I was in Miramichi, and I had a crazy schedule for work with different hours, so I had to do it when I could get it in sometimes, but I certainly see, but I would go to a lot of the Miramichi River Runners races, just so I could be part of that group and community, and you see, sometimes you'll challenge yourself a little more in a group, and sometimes it is just about the socialization, and so, but I think I think that's why running is so popular now. There's so many groups springing up all over the country and all over the world. You hear people talk about this running group, that running group, and they just, and you hold each other accountable in some ways. It's like, if you're on your own, say, I'm doing this for my health and fitness, but I'm kind of tired, I'm just gonna go back to bed. But if you have someone that oh, I'm meeting them for a run today, we said we'd run at 5:30 a.m., you're gonna go. Or you're more likely to go.
A go-to fueling strategy in a marathon?
In a marathon?
Yeah.
Yeah, so what works for me might not work for others, but I make sure, so in the first, I thought, all my reading, I thought in the first marathon I ran, I thought I knew about carbo loading. I was like, got this down, and I ran, and you learn from every race that you do, but I kind of, in the last 5K, I'm like, I don't feel very good. I don't, and I recognized after that, I probably hadn't carbo loaded quite right, and so I learned, I read, but all carbo load for about 3 days before, and I drink coffee all the time. I have coffee every day, but sometimes you've read about things. Stop coffee for a week before, and then just drink it on race day, and you'll get more benefit from it. But I don't think that's ever been proven. So, And I take gels, probably, and I know you read about gels, it says take every 30 to 45 minutes, or that doesn't work for me. I have to take them less often. I get a lot of GI upset with, so I probably take 4 gels in a marathon, maybe 5, depending, and I usually alternate water and sports drink, that every second stop, and that works for me. But and you have to practice in your training to see what you can tolerate. And I found too, as I got older, I could tolerate gels less and less and less. So I will on race day. Another funny story about my son asked me one time, he said, Mom, he said, one of my friends was running a race and I saw, do people like poop themselves when they race? It's like, yes, it happens. Like they see pictures online, it's like, because people, one, either they're not going to stop, or 2, there's no porta potty for quite a way and they have to go. And so these things happen. And so I had to go into the porta potty once in Toronto, in the Toronto Marathon a number of years ago, because I was having GI distress, and unfortunately there was a porta potty close by, but it was like, okay, never mind. So I will take, on race morning, I take 2 Imodium, and it works for me. And I gave that advice to a few other people that were having problems with it too. I was like, okay, that helps. So Imodium is kind of an anti-diarrheal medication for those, and 2 on race morning, that works for me. So, but I always tell people everybody is an individual, and you have to experiment a little and figure out what works for your body. And then, yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about your training? Like, what's your favorite workout when you prepare for the marathon? Or what do you do on your long run?
Yeah, so well, it's varied, I think, over the years. I used to love tempo runs. That was my favorite workout. Because you could go, and when a tempo run is that you're kind of halfway between your fast pace and your marathon pace, and you would just go for miles. Like you can barely talk, but able to talk. I used to love tempo running. Now, not so much. I like the shorter little intervals because they're over fast. And I used to love the long runs. I don't so much these. As my body ages, I found it more difficult to try to run at marathon pace for longer, I guess. But that's when, in younger years, like when I was in my 40s, I loved the long run. And as you get closer and closer to the marathon, you would add more and more at the marathon pace that you want to run for a portion of that, and that used to be my bread and butter. But I've had to rethink it over the last couple of training cycles. It's just age. And maybe in resetting goals and time expectations and things too. Yeah.
Any additional questions? Well, we're actually going to we'll stick around for a few more minutes. We have refreshments here, so certainly if you want to ask an individual question to Paula, she'll be here for a few more minutes. And then actually the venue is going to be used by the Fredericton Marathon. The group of elite athletes who are racing tomorrow are coming in for an information session. So we do have to clear out by 7 o'clock. So certainly feel free to grab a refreshment and chat with Paula if you wish. But I appreciate you being here this evening. Thanks so much. And if any of you are racing this weekend, good luck.
Yes, good luck.
And certainly thank you to Paula. So.
Yeah, thank you.